Let us build the most high-end value gaming PC possible. Does that make sense? In this video, proudly sponsored by Nvidia and Gigabyte, we're going to be building a pretty epic gaming PC with an RTX 4080 for ball-to-the-wall 4K performance, and we've pretty much gathered the best components that we can that aren't exactly cheap, but aren't exactly ridiculously expensive either. And throughout this video, as always, we're going to be showing you all of the best bits about these components, things we like, don't like, how to put it all together, and of course, at the end, show you those all-important gameplay benchmark numbers, so you know exactly how this thing performs and whether you should be building one yourself. So let's get our build on, shall we? To kick off, I want to tell you a little bit more about our theme because I understand it might not make sense, but let me elaborate. This is the RTX 4080. This is a ridiculously powerful graphics card. It's pretty much all the power anyone would really need. It's going to be perfect for 4K gaming. Supports things like DLSS 3.0. You've got ray tracing with support for Cyberpunk path tracing. We'll show you this all a little bit later, but obviously it is no surprise that this is not the absolute cheapest graphics card in the world. At the time of filming, it does cost over £1,000. So what you are going to have to do if you want to save a little bit of money, I guess, is to sort of cut a few corners elsewhere in your rig. And the good news is that you can actually do this without really holding that thing back. And the way that we're going to go about this is by grabbing our motherboard. This is the B650 Aorus Elite AX. This supports the latest AM5 processors from AMD, so you've got support for the absolute fastest 7800X3D if you want to go down that route. And the whole AMD lineup might sound a little bit confusing because there are actually a lot of chips at the moment. And essentially you've got 3 different variants per SKU. You've got these ones, which are the non-X, so this is the 7900. This is a 12-core CPU, perfect really for what we're doing here today. But if you want to step this up a little bit, you can buy the X version. That should cost a little bit more, though at the time of filming, they're actually fairly similar to the X version, so get whatever's cheapest. And then if you want to go absolute balls to the wall, you can buy the X3D versions that have 3D V-cache that make them even better for gaming. But today we're pretty much going to be focusing on 4K, so actually the 7900 looks to be a very good bet, but it's entirely up to you. Now, the case that we're building in today, to me, is incredibly exciting because I've not actually built on this before, and Antec cases, or at least the ones I've used before, have typically been a little bit cheaper, more accessible, and the build quality's been very good, but obviously not quite as good as the ones that are more expensive. Today, this is a bit different though, because this is not the absolute cheapest case. This comes in at around about £165, £170 at the time of filming. I imagine it will drop a little bit over time as it is brand new, but this is called the Antec Performance 1, and it is very much all about full tower, no compromises, but not costing you absolute stupid amounts of money. But a cool little feature you don't see that often, especially not at this price, is this little sort of on-screen display that you'll get underneath this tab here, because this can be configured with software to show you temperatures and things. We'll have a look a little bit later to see exactly what it can do, but if you want to like monitor your thermals without having an overlay or buying like a really expensive cooler that has a screen on it, this is a pretty cool way of doing it. I mean, if you think like the fancy coolers from your NZXTs, your Asuses, Corsairs, they can be like 250 quid. If you can get that sort of functionality on a case that costs 180, better value for money. But of course, I do want to make this abundantly clear. This is a very high-end rig. This is not all about value, price to performance. This is getting a lot and you're spending a lot, but you're not spending quite as much as you could if you didn't cut a few corners. It sounded better in my head than when I actually said it. Anyway, this is the insides of the chassis. I think you can get this in white if you want as well. I will say that these fans at the front aren't RGB, which definitely is going to bother some people, especially if you're going to have to pay for extra fans to sort of swap them out. I think these are decent fans, but if you're all about that RGB life, then I guess you'd rather they were RGB to begin with. Round the back. Well, I don't actually know because I haven't seen it yet. Oh, okay. Yeah, it uses the similar sort of Antec system that we've seen before. I like this because you get extra cable management, which means you can sort of tuck everything out of the way. What's the point of having a quick release at the top? Do I actually have to undo these screws? If this comes undone, once I've done these screws, I'm actually going to be annoyed. How does this work then? It just drops into place. I guess that makes sense, it's just not what I expected. I take it back, Antec. They're probably watching this video going, read the manual. But I say, where would the fun be in that? Otherwise, it looks to be a pretty standard case. If you're a lover of hard drive cages, be aware you've only got one down here at the bottom. But if you love radiators and fans, you can actually fit a 420 at the front, up to a 360 at the back, and then this looks to be a 140. 140 at the rear? Maybe that's a 120 actually. That seems like an oversight to me. It does annoy me when you can't put 140s at the back. Let us actually get our build started and underway though, with the really noisy bit. and no one's a fan of. And this board is what AMD are calling B650, so this is more, not entry level, but as far as gaming performance goes, this is all about giving you that and then not paying for a load of features that you're not necessarily going to use. Let's pop our motherboard down a little bit neater. We'll grab our Ryzen 9 12-core CPU. Let's gently open up our CPU slot, being careful not to damage any pins, drop anything into this or it'll be game over. Then we just gently lower down the CPU into place. There's only one right way of doing this. Push this back down, and then lower this retention arm until the cover pops off. And then you're going to want to go ahead and grab your memory or your RAM. And this is a 32 gigabyte kit. You can get 16, but the pricing difference isn't crazy. You might save another 30, 40 pounds by going for 16. Remember, this is DDR5 platform. You can't use your old DDR4. It will not fit and it will definitely not work. This stuff was supplied by Kingston. It is their Fury RGB, so it's very low profile. It looks pretty nice. And this is running at 5600 megahertz, which is pretty much the sweet spot really for most gaming at the moment. If you can buy one for 6,000, go ahead, but it doesn't make a drastic difference. If you want to see a full video about RAM speed, you can find this in the top right corner of your screen. But let's open up slots 2 and 4, gently drop this into place. While we're here, we'll grab our smaller screwdriver and open up the SSD bay, and then we'll grab our SSD. And surprisingly, I think SSDs are one of the products that have come down the most and you get the best value out of now. But let's grab our SSD, gently lower this into the slot, give it a little wiggle, push it down into this quick release, grab the cover, and put that back on top. The motherboard is now pretty much ready to go. The only other thing I want to do is to actually get our cooler bracket installed if necessary. And the one that we're using here, I think is perfectly going to match our case. Again, it's all about value, because I've seen this for about 130, 140 pounds, which for a 360 cooler is insane. This is one that was supplied by Deepcool. It's the LT720, but as you can tell from the box, you don't get RGB fans as standard, but you do get this RGB on this cool little block. It definitely looks a little bit different. So let us remove the default AM5 mounting hardware. Then we get these weird little AMD screws. Then you can drop and screw these into the pre-applied back plates. Right, we are now making progress. Let's drop this under the overhead, adjust the camera. Oh, you guys make me work, don't you? You make me work. Pick up your motherboard and then gently line this up with the pre-applied standoffs. This is the one to pay attention to because you can line this up and the whole board sort of drops and clicks into place almost. And then now comes the point in the video when we can actually praise Antec for doing a Fantex and giving you all of these screws individually in this little plastic case. Very useful. Someone said to me in a previous video,
"Oh, why are you moaning about the environment and all of this stuff when it comes in a plastic box?"
I mean, if you can keep this plastic box for the whole lifetime of like your chassis, which is probably going to be what, 5 to 10 years, that is much better than all of this stuff here. Look at that. Bags. Ugh. Use the disc-like screws and just gently secure the motherboard down. While we're down here, we can give this a twist. Pop out this top cover for the radiator. Remove the mesh as well. Remove the radiator from the bag. Take the fans out of their bags. Notice the Deepcool. Do better environmental packaging, please. Grab our fans and place them on top of the radiator so they're actually blowing into and through the radiator out the top, and you want the cable going out the back so you can bring it around the side and actually plug everything in. Screw them down. Oh, I've done what I said not to do. I have, haven't I? Oh, I've put the fans on the wrong way. I hate radiators.
I hate radiators.
Right, round 2. Let's try this again. It does look to me as if there is actually enough clearance here to plug in our CPU power connections. If this wasn't the case, I would go get the cable, plug it in now, because it makes it a whole lot easier, but actually, nice tall case, shouldn't be an issue. So all we need to do is just get this screwed into place, which is pretty much just as easy as that. We do, of course, now need to actually attach the pump head. Grab the bracket and then just gently line this up. Gently screw this in. Yes, there we go. And then in theory, it should just be a case of dropping this on and then screwing it into position. Then plug in the RGB on the right-hand side, and then the pump into the one that says CPU optional. Then let's give this a spin round. Oh, and I'll show you the cables and where they go. This is USB 3, and as this overlay shows, this is where it goes. You're starting to see how this bit works. HD audio looks a lot like USB. Goes over here. Your front panel connection that goes at the bottom right of the motherboard. And then I told you it looks like the HD audio. USB 2 goes right here. Magical. I mean, I probably should actually do it. I'm connecting my fans with a splitter just below the ATX connection. You also get a splitter that comes with all of these Deepcool fans, so these can be plugged into a single one too. We'll plug this right at the top into the one that says CPU fan. And then we have one more fan connection to plug in, which is this rear, and we're going to plug this next to the CPU fan right at the top. And so here we are, making moves. I'm liking how it's turning out. I mean, it is basically a fractal torrent from Antec. Let's kind of make that clear. I'm not saying who designed it first. I'm not saying anyone's copying anyone else. I'm saying the designs are similar, especially bear in mind you can also put some fans down here at the bottom as well. So something like a 4080, you might find you have lower thermals if you have extra air coming up through here. Definitely if you're going to do like a 4090 build, but to be honest, the cooling on the card that we're going to be using is more than sufficient, as I'm sure you'll see, that I don't really think you need it anyway. But it's nice to have the option. And it will look cool, especially if all of these fans match. And I think now is the time to finally grab our RTX 4080 and get this installed. So here we go, here we go. What is in the box though? It's a graphics card, who would have guessed? And this is ridiculously big. I mean, look at this. If you want quiet thermal performance, you are going to get it from this. The size of the heatsink is absolutely insane. And in a case like this, where you have room for it, it's not only gonna populate it and make it look better, but I think you're just gonna have an all-round better system, really. It's certainly a looker, isn't it? You've got that classic triple fan design, but it's just scaled up. Everything, like you know with an image where you grab the diagonal thing and you do that. That's basically what's happened with this card. But I do appreciate the fact that you have the new 12-volt high power connection, because it means, with the power supply we're going to use, that you can have one single cable that will come up and deliver all the power that you need, and it'll just look a whole lot cleaner and a whole lot nicer. So I'm quite excited to use this actually. In terms of I/O, you've got 3 DisplayPort 1.4s, 1 HDMI 2.1, so if you want to use this with a 4K TV or monitor, like you're probably going to want to, you can run this at 120 Hz at 4K, which is what I personally do downstairs, and I love it. Let us remove 3 slot covers for this card, pick up our Gigabyte RTX 4080 Gaming OC, and gently line this up with the slot. And bear in mind, Antec described this case as a full tower. It provides you with a lot of room, and you're definitely going to use it. It is also absolutely worth noting that you do also get a GPU sag bracket in the box should you wish to use it. I know a lot of people tend to be worried about that. It doesn't look too bad here, but it is a heavy card, so I probably would recommend that you do. And of course, if you do already have a power supply or you're buying one that doesn't come with this new fancy connection, you do get an adapter inside the box. And with that, we are pretty much done. It is just one more component to go, the power supply. And this one is brand new. It's just sent out to me by FSP. This is the Hydro TI, and this also kind of matches the theme really, because I've seen this for under £200, yet this is 1000 watts of power, 80 plus titanium, and comes with that new power connection. Certainly worth considering. I'll be absolutely upfront and honest with you though, I haven't actually used an FSP power supply before, so this is going to be a bit of an adventure for us, and I'll be giving you my feedback as we go. But hopefully it will be very cool and quiet as well. Power supplies aren't normally the most interesting things in the world, but this is obviously fully modular, so obviously you only need the cables that you actually need to use. You've got that PCI connection at the top right, and this is a hybrid power supply, so it will work completely fanless at, it's something like 25-30% load. The fan won't come on, but once it goes over that, obviously this will spin and keep your power supply cool. Let's grab our power supply bracket from the back of the case. Fan facing downwards, cables through, and fix up with the thumb screws. Then you just pretty much need to plug the cables in, and you're done. So here we are then, the final piece of the puzzle, our Gen 5 connection. Get that in real nice and tight, gently neaten it up, and I think that is actually our rig complete. This has come out pretty well. I mean, the cable management around the back, I say it could use a bit of improvement. We've done a very simple rig here. I mean, this is all great. I would prefer like a little channel tie down there, but you can see we've got it over this side as well. So all I need to do is tuck that in there, tuck this in there. Easy as that, really. But I think the time for talk is over. Should we get this thing powered on? So let's grab our 4K monitor, keyboard and mouse, and of course, most importantly of all, the PC-Centric mouse mat. Link to buy this is located down below, now shipping. Get one of yours today. So let's hit the power button and see if she works. I mean, those fans are powerful. I will be turning those down a bit. Come on, come on. Oh. Yay! There we go. First boot does always take a little bit of time. New CPU installed. We do need to reset the firmware TPM, which in plain English means I've used this before with Windows 11 and a different CPU. So the motherboard and CPU kind of need to reset so they can repair. That is loud. That is a lot of airflow. If you want this, it can do it. But I would recommend tuning it. But otherwise, we are in. The computer is working. If you are following this guide from scratch, then obviously you need to download a copy of Windows 11 onto a USB drive, put it in the back of your rig, and it should actually automatically boot into that. Just follow the on-screen instructions. Then I'll enable XMP, tune all of the fans. But otherwise, I'll just get all my games updated, and we'll be right back. In It's here! Ladies and gentlemen, we are all set up and ready to go. I will say that there was a lot of fan tuning to get this where I wanted it. It's still not quite there. Basically, these are just really powerful fans that a lot of people are going to want, but I don't think they fully realise just how loud they will be in their default state. So if you do buy this case, please, please, please tune your fans. They do not need to be that loud. It's nice that they have the potential, but eventually you could get it somewhere like this, which is great. You do also need to install the Antec iUtility in order to get their little display on the front to work, but for some reason, I don't think they've actually incorporated multi-GPU support, which might not sound that important, right? Except for the fact that it actually defaults to the AMD internal iGPU for temperatures, so when you push the button on the front to cycle between GPU and CPU, it gives you an accurate CPU but an inaccurate GPU. Hopefully this can be fixed with a software update, so Antec, let me know about that. Otherwise, let's jump into the games. And let us begin with everybody's favourite ray tracing title, some Cyberpunk 2077. This is running at 4K with DLSS set to automatic, and this is currently ray tracing ultra without frame generation. And as you can see, you get all these lovely reflections come across on the ground, and the frame rate actually is around about 70 frames a second, which even without the extra tech from frame gen is pretty fantastic. This is a little bit higher than I played the game when I played it through originally, and I definitely didn't have it anywhere near as high as this. So it goes to show that you can have your 4K gaming cake and eat it. But things actually get a lot better when you go into the settings, because there is this new setting called frame generation. And for me, I would say that this is probably my favorite thing about these new 40 series GPUs, because if you think with Cyberpunk, it is a notoriously difficult game to run, even if you don't have ray tracing enabled. Yet we're now able to get around about 105 frames a second with all of the eye candy turned on. And the way it works is pretty clever. It essentially renders alternate frames and then uses AI to fill in the gaps. And it does it in such a cool way, you'd never really know it was enabled. But there is also one other setting we can enable, and this is called path tracing. So we go to the quick preset and change it to ray tracing overdrive. And then I'll change the DLSS super resolution to performance from automatic, just so we know it's going to be consistent. And then we go back into our game and you will see that the levels of quality have gone through the roof. This is literally ridiculous. As the name suggests, full path tracing actually path traces all the rays of light, rather than using individual RTS techniques to sort of maybe do the shadows, the reflections. This actually does it as realistic as you can get. I mean, just look at the ground now. That is absolutely insane. And the thing is, it's not just about reflections. This really is about the full lighting package, and it really does make the difference between a game that looks great and a game that looks properly realistic. I mean, it's something that I really hope comes across properly in this footage, because it just looks so much more realistic than pretty much any other game I've seen. I mean, we've seen things like Porto RTX that have this same technique, but obviously because it's an older title, I guess it's a lot easier to run, but then the textures and things are clearly a little bit out of date. Whereas this is Cyberpunk. This is cutting edge graphics mixed with cutting edge ray tracing with path tracing. I mean, just look at that. Honestly, every time I see this, it is absolutely jaw-dropping. It really, really is. Let's grab ourselves a controller though and move on to our next title, some Spider-Man Remastered. And as we gently glide and flow through the city, we're currently getting around about 110 frames a second. Let me double check the settings. I think this is max. And then here we have, DLSS is set to quality. So let's change this to balanced. Turn on DLSS frame generation. Ray tracing was off. So let's turn this on now. And as you can see, our frame rate has now actually increased despite upping up the quality. This is the benefit of having frame generation. Our latency, again, is around about 50 milliseconds or so, especially with a controller. This is pretty much where you want it really for a single player game, getting the balance really between visuals and of course the way the game feels. I mean, in fact, we're actually getting a tiny bit of CPU bottlenecking, so we can turn the DLSS back up to quality and we probably won't really lose any frame rate. And yeah, there you go, still around about 110, 115 frames a second, and the quality is now ever so slightly better. So if you want to play Spider-Man in 4K with ray tracing, you don't have to settle for 30 frames a second, you can get 115. Oh, and we probably should do a little noise test for you. Literally nothing. Told you it needed a bit of a tune, and tune it has had. In terms of our thermals, about 50 degrees on the graphics card, so you really don't need to add any extra fans down there. The Gigabyte card doing a very good job, and the CPU is currently sitting about 63, so that is the benefit again of going for that 65 watt SKU, whereas if you do go for the 3D, it probably will make a fair bit more noise, but we've clearly got a lot more thermal capacity in this system, so I wouldn't worry about thermals at all. Let us press on though to our multiplayer titles with some Battlefield 2042. We've gone back in time. 2077 is just too... okay, it's chaos. There's no time for chat. No time for chat. How are we doing for frame rate? This is 4K with DLSS, set to balanced, absolute max ultra settings, bar ray tracing, and we're currently getting about 88 frames a second. And as we all know, Battlefield is one of the best looking games you can have when it comes to multiplayer. I mean, to be fair, the new Fortnite update with Unreal 5 does look pretty insane when you turn all of the ray tracing on, but this is almost like the OG. Let's stay calm for a second and show you some more optimized settings, because to be fair, you guys are always asking for this, and I don't know why I didn't think of this sooner. We'll change this to custom and then pretty much set everything else to high, as it's still going to look great. And then DLSS we can probably set to performance as well, because of course we're running this at 4K. And as you can see, our frame rate has increased to around about 105, 110 frames a second, which if you're using a 120 Hz monitor or a TV like this, clearly you're going to get a lot more out of it. So it's nice to have all of the options. But let us now take this opportunity to jump out of a plane into some Warzone 2. I know you guys have been waiting for this one. And if you look at the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see our frame rate at 4K with DLSS set to quality is around about 110 frames a second. So that's 110 frames a second, 4K DLSS. Oh no, no! Oh. I guess we'll just have to resume this in the gulag, won't we? I mean, to be fair, the frame rate is a lot higher here. This would be a very unfair way of doing this. We're now getting about 150, 160. Let's have a look. Eliminate the opponent. Can I do this? Oh. Oh! Yes! That means we get to redeploy, baby! And this is a good thing, because I do actually want to show you what happens if we turn the DLSS down a little bit, because a lot of people do want to play at 1440p. We'll change this down to performance, which essentially renders this at about 1080p and uses AI to upscale it. And as you can see, our frame rate has now increased to around about 130, 135 frames a second, but this is now in the big open bit of the map. So if we went back into the gulag, we'd probably get about, what, 175 or so. So if you are after a high refresh rate monitor, regardless of whether it's at 4K or 1440p, 4080, there's you covered. It is interesting though, because if you look at the top right hand corner of your screen, you'll see that the GPU utilization is only about 80 to 85%, which does once again show you that we do have some performance left on the table. So actually DLSS balance or quality probably is going to be your best bet, but this is one of the titles, if you did want to upgrade the CPU to the X3D, then you would get a higher frame rate, but again, you are going to lose out on 4 cores. So it's pretty much a case of picking the CPU that works best for you, really. But anyway, there you go. This has been the 4080 build whilst trying to save a little bit of money whilst getting everything. The cake and eat it, but don't spend money you don't need to spend. I'll come up with a new name and we'll change the title a little bit later. I'd absolutely love to hear your thoughts on this. Personally speaking, I think it probably does need a little bit more RGB, or you could save some money and just get rid of the RGB RAM, because that almost sticks out a little bit. But I absolutely love this cooler. It really does stand out, looks quite unique. As for the case itself, very little to complain about. It's pretty much just the fact that you can't put a 140 at the back and there is no integrated fan hub, but I don't think most people are going to be too fussed about that, especially if you're going to upgrade the fans to RGB ones. But as the ones you get are very good, I don't necessarily see that as something everyone has to do. But as I say, I would absolutely love to hear your thoughts, so please do let me know down in the comment section below. Smash the like button if you enjoyed this, get yourself subscribed, and if you do want to check out current pricing on anything featured in this rig, you can find it listed down below with my Amazon affiliate links. Thank you so much for watching this video. We'll catch you in the next one.